Have you ever made a mistake so devastating it completely rewrites your destiny? One wrong tap on a glowing screen is all it takes to hand your life over to a monster in a tailored suit. You think your drunk texts are bad. Wait until you hear what happened when a scandalous photo found its way to the most lethal man in Seattle. Rain lashed against the windows of Victoria Kingsley's cramped apartment in Capitol Hill. It was a miserable Tuesday night, fitting perfectly with her current state of mind. At 26, Victoria had just been abruptly dumped by her boyfriend of 3 years, Tyler Brooks. Tyler was a software developer who spent more time obsessing over his crypto portfolio than her, and his parting words had been a masterclass in gaslighting. "You're just too predictable, Victoria." "There's no spark anymore," he had sneered before packing his duffel bag and walking out the door. Predictable. The word bounced around her skull, echoing through the empty rooms, alongside the sad pop playlist she had, looping on Spotify. Her best friend Madison Hayes had arrived 30 minutes later, armed with a bottle of Don Julio tequila, 2 limes and a mission. Madison was a force of nature, a fiercely protective hurricane of red hair and bad advice. "We are not crying over a man who wears toe shoes to the gym," Madison declared, pouring 2 aggressive shots. "We are going to make him regret the day he ever learned how to speak. Drink." Victoria drank. The tequila burned a fiery trail down her throat, temporarily searing away the sting of rejection. 3 shots later, Madison's master plan was set into motion. The goal was simple, the ultimate revenge thirst trap. A photo so devastatingly alluring that Tyler would choke on his morning protein shake. Madison rummaged through Victoria's closet, emerging with a dark burgundy lace bodysuit that Victoria had bought for an anniversary trip Tyler had cancelled at the last minute. "Put this on. Do your hair. We are entering your villain era," Madison commanded. In the dim, moody lighting of her bedroom, fueled by heartbreak and premium agave, Victoria actually felt beautiful. Madison acted as the creative director, snapping dozens of photos on Victoria's iPhone 14. They reviewed the gallery laughing until their stomachs ached. This one, Madison pointed to the screen. It was undeniably stunning. Victoria was looking over her shoulder, the burgundy lace contrasting sharply with her pale skin, the shadows highlighting every curve. It wasn't overly explicit, but it dripped with a raw, undeniable sensuality. It was entirely out of character for the predictable junior financial analyst. "Send it." Madison urged, her eyes gleaming with chaotic energy. "Send it to him on Signal. I know he checks that app obsessively because of his weird tech bro privacy paranoia." Victoria's heart hammered in her chest. The tequila whispered that this was a fantastic idea. She opened the encrypted messaging app. Her fingers were slightly clumsy as she navigated the interface. She attached the photo. She typed a quick, biting caption, "Predictable think again. Have a nice life, Ty." She hit send. A small whoosh sound confirmed the message was delivered. Victoria threw the phone onto her duvet, giggling nervously with Madison. They celebrated with another shot, reveling in the empowerment of the moment. 10 minutes later, Madison went to the kitchen to order a pizza. Left alone, Victoria picked up her phone to check if Tyler had read it. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She opened the app. The color instantly drained from her face. The room started to spin, and it had absolutely nothing to do with the tequila. She hadn't sent the message to Tyler. In her slightly inebriated haste, she had tapped the thread just above his. A thread that belonged to her boss. Actually, not just her boss. The CEO and founder of Croft Enterprises, the multi-billion-dollar hedge fund where she worked. Alistair Croft. Alistair Croft was a phantom in Seattle's financial district. He was notoriously reclusive, operating his empire strictly between the hours of sunset and sunrise. He required his top analysts, Victoria included, to work the graveyard shift to match his bizarre schedule. He was intimidating, impossibly wealthy, and had a cold, predatory aura that made grown men stutter in his presence. Rumors swirled about him constantly that he was involved in the underground mob, that he had a rare medical condition, that he was utterly ruthless. And Victoria had just sent him a photo of herself in lingerie. "Maddie," Victoria shrieked, her voice cracking in pure, unadulterated terror. Madison ran into the room, a slice of pepperoni pizza already in hand. "What did he reply? Is he begging for you back?" "No." Victoria gasped, clutching her chest as a full-blown panic attack set in. "I sent it to Alistair. I sent the photo to Alistair Croft." Madison stopped chewing. "Shut up. No, you didn't." She snatched the phone from Victoria's trembling hands. Madison stared at the screen, her eyes widening to the size of saucers. Beneath the scandalous photo and the sassy caption, 2 tiny, terrifying check marks sat in the corner. Read 10. 42 p.m. "Oh my God," Madison whispered. He saw it. "How do I unsend it?" "Delete it. Delete the app. Burn the phone." Victoria was hyperventilating, pacing the small bedroom. "I'm fired. I'm definitely fired. My career in finance is over. I'll have to move back to Ohio. I'll have to fake my own death." Madison frantically tapped the screen. "It's Signal Clo. It's encrypted. I can delete it for you, but it's already been seen." He read it 2 minutes ago. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Victoria imagined the terrifying CEO sitting in his penthouse, staring at his phone, his icy blue eyes analyzing her half-naked body. She waited for the inevitable response. A formal termination notice, a message from Human Resources, a lawsuit for workplace harassment. But her phone remained entirely silent. Midnight came and went. Then 1:00 a.m. Nothing. Maybe he'll pretend it didn't happen. Madison offered weakly around 2:00 a.m., though neither of them believed it. Alistair Croft missed nothing. He was a man who fired an executive for rounding a decimal point incorrectly. He wasn't going to ignore this. Victoria barely slept. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, dreading the moment the sun would go down the next day. Because when the sun went down, her shift began, and she would have to face the man whose inbox she had just permanently scarred. Wednesday evening arrived with a thick, oppressive fog rolling off Puget Sound. Victoria stood in front of the massive black glass monolithic skyscraper that housed Croft Enterprises, clutching her umbrella like a shield. She was wearing her most conservative outfit, a high-necked white blouse, a black blazer, and wide-legged trousers. She looked like a nun going to a corporate funeral. "Just walk in, pack your desk, and resign before he can fire you," she told herself. She swiped her badge at the turnstiles and stepped into the sleek, marble-floored lobby. The night shift at Croft was always unnervingly quiet. No ringing phones, no loud chatter, just the soft hum of servers and the clicking of keyboards. As soon as Victoria stepped off the elevator onto the 40th floor, Brenda Gallagher from HR was waiting for her. Brenda was a stern woman in her 50s who looked like she chewed gravel for breakfast. "Miss Kingsley," Brenda said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Mr. Croft would like to see you in his office. Immediately." Victoria's stomach plummeted to her knees. "Right now, should I bring my laptop or just a box for my things?" Brenda's eyes narrowed slightly. "Just yourself, 50th floor." The elevator ride to the top floor felt like a slow ascent to the gallows. The 50th floor belonged entirely to Alistair. It was a restricted zone. Victoria had only been up here once during her final interview, and the memory still sent shivers down her spine. The doors chimed open, revealing a dimly lit, expansive antechamber, decorated with centuries-old European art and dark mahogany paneling. It smelled faintly of old paper ozone and copper. "Come in, Victoria," a voice called out. It was a voice that vibrated right through her ribs, deep, smooth, and laced with an aristocratic English accent that commanded absolute obedience. Victoria pushed open the heavy oak doors to his main office. The room was massive, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glittering skyline of Seattle. But Victoria wasn't looking at the view. Her eyes were fixed on the man sitting behind the sprawling obsidian desk. Alistair Croft was devastatingly handsome in a way that felt almost dangerous. His dark hair was flawlessly styled, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass. He wore a bespoke charcoal suit that clung perfectly to his broad shoulders. But it was his eyes that always unsettled her. They were a pale, piercing blue that seemed to glow faintly in the low light. He didn't look like a man in his 30s. He looked timeless, like a predator carved from marble. "Mr. Croft, I can explain," Victoria blurted out, instantly the words tumbling over each other in her panic. "I am so incredibly sorry. It was a terrible mistake. I meant to send it to my ex-boyfriend, not that that makes it professional. I was drinking and I tapped the wrong thread, and I know it violates every standard of workplace conduct. You don't have to fire me. I've already drafted my resignation." Alistair raised a single, elegantly manicured hand. The gesture was slight, but it silenced her immediately. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he reached out and slowly turned his large, curved monitor so it faced her. Victoria gasped. Displayed on the glowing screen, blown up to a terrifyingly high resolution, was the photo. The burgundy lace, the shadowed curves, the biting caption. "I received your portfolio update last night," Alistair said, his voice a low, rumbling purr. He leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his long fingers. He didn't look angry. He looked fascinated. Victoria's face flushed so hot she thought she might spontaneously combust. "Please, Mr. Croft, take it down. I'll pack my desk." "Sit down, Victoria," he commanded. It wasn't a request. Trembling, she lowered herself into the velvet chair opposite his desk. "You are not fired," Alistair stated calmly. Victoria blinked, stunned. I'm not, no." Alistair stood up. His movements were impossibly fluid, completely silent. He walked around the desk, his tall frame towering over her. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "In fact, your accidental transmission proved to be incredibly serendipitous. It revealed something to me that I had somehow overlooked during your tenure here. That I have terrible judgment when I drink tequila," she whispered. Alistair let out a sound that was half chuckle, half growl. He stopped right beside her chair. He was so close she could smell his cologne, a heady mix of bergamot cedar, and something intoxicatingly sweet beneath it. "No," he said softly. He reached out his cool fingers, lightly grazing her shoulder, sending a shock wave of electricity through her nerves. He trailed his index finger down her collarbone, stopping precisely over the faint, crescent-shaped birthmark she had had since childhood, a mark clearly visible in the scandalous photo. "That you carry the bloodline of the Giulianis." He murmured, his eyes darkening from pale blue to a deep, stormy violet. Victoria froze. What centuries ago there were families whose blood was considered a delicacy, a rare vintage, if you will. Alistair explained, leaning in so close his lips brushed her ear. "I thought the line had died out in the late 1800s. But then my junior analyst sends me a photograph, and there it is. The crescent mark. The proof." Victoria's mind raced. Was he insane? Was her billionaire boss in some kind of weird cult? "Mr. Croft, I don't understand. What does my birthmark have to do with—" Before she could finish her sentence, Alistair moved. He was suddenly kneeling beside her chair, his face inches from hers. And when he smiled, Victoria's heart stopped. There, resting against his lower lip, were two elongated, razor-sharp fangs. "It means Miss Kingsley," Alistair whispered, his gaze dropping to the pulse pounding frantically in her neck that you are no longer an analyst for Croft Enterprises. As of tonight, you are my personal donor. And you are moving into my penthouse. Victoria tried to scramble back, but his hand shot out, gripping her wrist with the strength of a steel vice. It didn't hurt, but the sheer unnatural power behind it paralyzed her. "Let me go," she breathed, terrified tears pricking her eyes. You're a vampire. This is insane." "I am a king," Alistair corrected smoothly, his thumb stroking her racing pulse point. "And I am offering you a choice. Sign a new contract with me. Live in luxury. Let me taste you once a week, and I will make sure you never want for anything again." "And if I say no?" Victoria asked, her voice trembling. Alistair's expression hardened into a mask of pure, beautiful cruelty. "If you refuse, I will personally visit Tyler Brooks tonight, and I guarantee there won't be enough left of him to fill a coffee cup. Fear is a funny thing. It paralyzes you, at first twisting your stomach into agonizing knots, but eventually, pure survival instinct takes the wheel." Faced with the reality of an ancient blood-drinking predator threatening to turn her toxic ex-boyfriend into a messy splatter on the pavement, Victoria Kingsley did the only logical thing a 26-year-old girl in crushing student debt could do. She signed the contract. Within 48 hours, her life was entirely uprooted. She was moved out of her moldy Capitol Hill apartment and relocated to Alistair Croft's sprawling 3-story penthouse overlooking Elliott Bay. The space was a breathtaking monument to wealth and isolation. Floor-to-ceiling smart glass windows could be blacked out with the touch of a button, shielding the interior from the lethal daytime sun. There were private indoor pools, a library filled with first-edition classics, and a wardrobe pre-stocked with designer clothes in her exact size. Her best friend Madison was beside herself, with glee, entirely oblivious to the supernatural reality of the situation. "You accidentally sexted the billionaire CEO, and now you're his live-in girlfriend. Victoria, you are my literal hero." Madison had shrieked over a FaceTime call on Friday evening. Victoria was sitting on a plush velvet sofa, wearing a silk robe that cost more than her car. "It's not like that," Maddie Victoria replied, rubbing her temples. "It's a professional arrangement, an exclusive contract. Call it whatever you want, babe. Tyler is losing his mind. He saw you getting into the Croft Enterprises private town car yesterday. He's been aggressively posting cryptographs on Instagram all day, just to cope." Victoria hung up shortly after the mention of Tyler, sending a spike of anxiety through her chest. She hadn't seen Alistair since the night in his office. He had given her 2 days to settle in a terrifying grace period that left her jumping at every shadow in the massive penthouse. But Friday night was the deadline, her first donation. At exactly midnight, the heavy oak doors of the penthouse library swung open. Alistair stepped into the room, discarding his bespoke suit jacket over a chair. He wore a crisp white dress shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing pale, heavily scarred forearms that spoke of centuries of violent history. He looked breathtakingly dangerous. "Are you comfortable, Victoria?" he asked, his aristocratic accent slicing through the quiet room. "I'm terrified," she answered honestly, her fingers gripping the edge of the leather armchair. Alistair paused, his icy blue eyes softening just a fraction. He walked toward her, his footsteps completely silent against the Persian rug. He knelt before her chair, just as he had in his office, but this time there was no hostility, only a terrifying magnetic intensity. "I am not going to hurt you," he murmured. He reached up his cool fingers, gently brushing her hair away from her neck. "My kind. We are monsters to the world, yes, but to a willing donor, especially one of your bloodline, we are uniquely equipped to provide absolute euphoria. Trust me." Victoria closed her eyes, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Just get it over with. Alistair leaned in. She felt the cool press of his lips against the sensitive skin of her neck, right over her pulse point. A shiver violently wrecked her body. Then, a sharp, momentary pinch like a needle drawing blood at a doctor's office. Victoria braced herself for the agonizing pain, for the horrific feeling of her life being drained away. But the pain never came. Instead, a sudden explosive rush of liquid heat flooded her veins. It was like a potent dose of morphine mixed with pure adrenaline. Her eyes flew open, a breathless gasp escaping her lips. The venom in Alistair's bite acted as a supernatural narcotic, washing away her fear, her anxiety, and her stress. In its place was a dizzying, intoxicating pleasure that made her arch her back against the chair. She felt Alistair swallow a rhythmic, deeply intimate sensation. Her hands, acting entirely on their own, reached up and tangled into his dark, silken hair. He groaned softly against her skin, a deeply masculine primal sound that sent a fresh wave of heat straight to her core. When he finally pulled away a minute later, the wound on her neck was already closing, sealed by his saliva. Alistair's eyes were completely black, blown wide with absolute ecstasy. He wiped a single drop of crimson from his lower lip with his thumb. Magnificent, he breathed, staring at her, as if she were a goddess descended from the heavens. I have walked this earth for 400 years, Victoria. I have never tasted anything like you. Victoria sat there, flushed, breathless, and utterly ruined. The terrifying truth hit her with the force of a freight train. She hadn't just survived the Vampire King. She was deeply, hopelessly attracted to him. Over the next 3 weeks, their dynamic shifted radically. What began as a hostage situation morphed into a twisted, intensely passionate romance. Alistair was fiercely protective, showering her with affection and luxury, and during their midnight feeding sessions, the line between predator and lover completely blurred. He listened to her, he valued her sharp financial mind, and he treated her with a dark reverence that Tyler never had. But reality has a nasty habit of breaking down locked doors, and Tyler Brooks was a man who hated losing. Wednesday night brought a vicious Pacific Northwest storm, rattling the reinforced glass of the penthouse. Victoria was in the master bathroom, soaking in a massive marble tub, when her iPhone buzzed on the vanity. It was a text from Tyler. I know what's going on, Victoria. I know about your creepy billionaire sugar daddy, and I know about the Croft Enterprises server. Victoria sat up the warm water, sloshing over the edges. Her blood ran cold. You ghost me move into a penthouse and think I wouldn't notice I still have the back door tracker on your phone from when we lived together. I'm in the building. I'm bypassing the penthouse security right now. Let's see how much Mr. Croft is willing to pay to keep his illegal offshore accounts a secret. Oh my God, Victoria whispered. Tyler, in all his arrogant, toxic glory, had hacked his way into the building. He thought Alistair was just a corrupt hedge fund manager. He had no idea he was walking into a literal slaughterhouse. Victoria scrambled out of the tub, throwing on a plush bathrobe. She sprinted out of the bedroom just as the private elevator doors chimed open in the main foyer. Tyler stepped out, wearing a damp Patagonia vest and a smug, victorious smirk. He held a custom-built decryption tablet in his hand. Security here is a joke, if you know how to code Clo. Nice place. Guess selling out pays well. Tyler, you need to leave, Victoria pleaded, rushing down the sweeping glass staircase. Right now. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly, Tyler scoffed, walking toward the center of the living room, completely ignoring her panic. I'm going to download the private ledgers. You're going to help me, or I leak the fact that the great Alistair Croft is funding his empire through illicit. Through illicit, what exactly? The voice echoed from the shadows of the library. It was terrifyingly calm. Tyler froze. Alistair stepped into the dim light of the foyer. He wasn't wearing a suit tonight. He wore black slacks and a dark-fitted shirt, his pale skin glowing ominously in the ambient light. His eyes were fixed on Tyler, and they weren't blue. They were the darkest, most violent shade of violet Victoria had ever seen. Mr. Croft Tyler said, trying to puff out his chest, though his voice wavered slightly. I have access to your mainframe. If I press this button, your offshore data goes to the SEC, unless you wire $10 million to my wallet. Alistair didn't even look at the tablet. He tilted his head, a cold, predatory smile spreading across his face. You broke into my home. You threatened the woman who belongs to me. And you think you have leverage. In the blink of an eye, Alistair vanished. Before Tyler could even blink, Alistair materialized directly in front of him. He grabbed Tyler by the throat, lifting the grown man 3 feet off the ground with a single, effortless motion. Tyler's tablet shattered against the marble floor. Tyler gagged his face, turning a violent shade of purple as he kicked his legs in the air, his eyes bulging in absolute horror as Alistair's fangs descended. Alistair Victoria screamed. She ran across the floor, throwing herself at Alistair's arm. Don't kill him! Alistair's violent gaze snapped to her. The beast was fully at the surface, now practically vibrating with the need to tear the intruder apart. He threatened you. He stalked you. He deserves to be drained. He's an idiot! Victoria yelled, her hands gripping Alistair's cold, iron-hard bicep. She looked deep into the vampire's violet eyes, refusing to back down. He's a pathetic, arrogant idiot. But if you rip his throat out on my living room floor, you're the monster he thinks you are. And I won't stay with a monster. Silence descended on the room, broken only by Tyler's pathetic, wheezing gasps. Alistair stared down at Victoria. The raw power dynamic shifted in a split second. He was an immortal king, a creature of nightmare and legend. But right here, right now, Victoria Kingsley held his leash, because he was completely, irrevocably addicted to her. Slowly the violet receded from Alistair's eyes, replaced by his natural icy blue. His fangs retracted. With a look of utter disgust, he threw Tyler across the room like a rag doll. Tyler crashed into a velvet sofa, coughing violently, and scrambling backward like a terrified crab. You're a freak, Tyler sobbed, clutching his bruised throat. Alistair adjusted his cuffs, his aristocratic composure returning seamlessly. He looked down at the pathetic tech bro. You will leave Seattle tonight. You will never contact Victoria again. You will never speak of what you saw. If you do, I won't just kill you. I will make a very long, very painful art project out of your nervous system. Do you understand? Tyler nodded frantically, scrambling to his feet and sprinting back to the elevator, hammering the button until the doors closed, whisking him away forever. Victoria stood in the center of the room, her chest heaving. She felt a warm, strong arm wrap around her waist, pulling her flush against a solid chest. Alistair buried his face in her wet hair, breathing in her scent. You are far too merciful, my queen, he murmured against her skin. Victoria leaned back into his embrace, a dark, triumphant smile touching her lips. Tyler was gone. Her debts were non-existent, and she held the heart of the most dangerous man in the city in the palm of her hand. I'm not merciful, Victoria whispered, turning her head to kiss his cold, sharp jawline. I just didn't want him ruining the marble floors. Alistair chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound that promised a very long, very entertaining eternity. Sometimes the worst mistake of your life turns out to be exactly what you needed to become, the villain you were always meant to be. What would you do if a single text changed your life forever? Would you run from the monster? Or would you stay and claim the throne? Let me know in the comments below. If you loved this wild vampire romance drama, smash that like button, Share it with your friends who love a good plot twist, and don't forget to subscribe for more crazy, twisted real-life story times every single week. See you in the next video.